What's up, everybody? Welcome to the stack. I'm neonmushroom. Oh, and welcome back if you've been here before. Today, we have more EDH/Commander gameplay for you guys. Nothing you need to know beyond that for this particular video, so let's go ahead and take a look at who's playing, what they're playing, and what their opening hands look like, as well as some upkeep stuff.
As always, if you like this show or any of our other shows on YouTube, liking, sharing, and subscribing helps us out immensely. If you like our content and don't mind that extra mile, you can always support us over on Patreon, over at patreon.com/mtg the stack.
Like Ryan Foley.
Like Ryan Foley. Like Ryan Foley.
Comment down below any of your thoughts and feelings, and we hope you enjoy the show.
First up, there's me playing one of my personal favorite decks, Yuriko the Tiger Shadow. This is going to be a tempo deck using Yuriko to maintain both a good amount of card advantage, and I want to use her activated ability to deal as much damage to my opponents as possible, closing out the game using cards like Vampiric Tutor and Personal Tutor to stack the top of my library with as much damage as possible. I'll be keeping a 7-card hand, including Sunken Hollow, Dark Slick Shores, Watery Grave, Morphic Pool, Thoughtseize, Mental Misstep, and a Phyrexian Walker. Next up, we have Guy playing my Sakashima of 1,000 Faces Vial Smasher partner pairing. This is going to be a Grixis mid-range deck, looking to make as many copies of Vial Smasher as possible in order to roll a lot of dice to deal a lot of damage. Guy keeps a pretty solid 7-card hand, including Obosh the Prey Piercer, Dockside Extortionist, Sin Prodder, Ancient Tomb, Dragon Skull Summit, Mountain, and a Flooded Strand. Next up, we have Calvin playing his partner pairing of Tevesh, Szat, Doom of Fools, and Prava of the Steel Legion. This is going to be a grindy tap-out control style deck looking to maintain control over the early game using mass discard and board wipes, and then win in the late game using something like Tevesh, Szat, Doom of Fools. Calvin's going to keep a pretty risky 7-card hand, including Plains, Necromancy, Vampiric Tutor, a Land Tax, Siphon Mine, Liliana Vess, and Delirium Skeins. Last but not least, we have Ajdin playing yet another one of my personal builds, Akiri Fearless Voyager. This is a Voltron-style aggressive deck looking to use Akiri as a card advantage engine and a way to protect your own creatures in order to kill all of your opponents using combat damage with equipped creatures. Ajdin is the last of us to keep a 7-card hand, including Rayav, Master Smith, Stoneforge Mystic, Hammer of Nizan, Bloodstained Mire, Plains, Rugged Prairie, and a Swords to Plowshares. I won the die roll, so I'm going to start by drawing a card, playing Dark Slick Shores as my land for turn, and then I'll drop that Phyrexian Walker. Then I'll tap my land for black mana, and I'm going to Thoughtseize Calvin.
Now you're going to see my really bad keep. It's a really bad keep.
Get rid of that Jewel Lotus.
Do it.
Is it? Do you get rid of the Jewel Lotus?
Is there a Jewel Lotus?
Or the Mana Crypt? Which one do you get rid of?
I'm about to be real mean to you, just so you know.
After seeing his one-lander, I decided to take out the Vampiric Tutor and pass the turn over to Guy, who draws, plays a Flooded Strand, and passes to Calvin, who draws, plays the Plains, and tries to drop Land Tax. I'm going to pay 2 life and Mental Misstep the Land Tax, putting him on 1 land. After this, we'll go to Ajdin's turn. He will draw for turn, drop a Bloodstained Mire, and pass the turn back to me. After drawing my card, I'm going to drop a Morphic Pool as my land for turn and get straight into combat. I'm going to turn my Phyrexian Walker sideways at Guy, then I'll Ninjutsu in Yuriko. Guy's going to take the damage, he goes down to 39. I'll reveal Prismatic Vista, redeploy the Phyrexian Walker, and try to pass the turn, but Guy's going to fetch first, going to 38. He'll get Steam Vents into play tapped, then he'll untap and draw his card for turn. In his first main phase, he'll start out with a Dragon Skull Summit, tap it for colorless, and play a Soul Ring, then he'll tap for 3 and play a Sin Prodder. With nothing else, he's going to pass the turn over to Calvin, who draws, top decks the land, he plays a Bloodstained Mire, tries to pass. First, Ajdin wants to fetch, going to 39 to get a Sacred Foundry, then he'll shuffle up, untap, and draw his card for turn. He'll drop a basic Plains, and I'll just pass the turn to me. After drawing my card, I'm going to head straight into combat, and I'm going to turn both my creatures sideways at Calvin. With no blockers declared, I'm going to tap 2 mana and Ninjutsu in Ninja of the Deep Hours in place of the Phyrexian Walker. Calvin takes the damage. I'm going to stack my triggers to draw the card off of the Ninja of the Deep Hours first, and then we have 2 Yuriko triggers. We'll reveal Jace the Mind Sculptor, dealing 4 to everyone at the table, and then we'll reveal Ingenious Infiltrator, dealing yet another 4 to everybody at the table. I'll move to my second main phase, drop Prismatic Vista, and I'll immediately fetch, dropping down to 35 to search my library for a basic island. After this point, I'm going to tap that island for blue to play out Mothdash Changeling, and then I'll pass the turn over to Guy. On Guy's upkeep, there is a Sin Prodder trigger, so he's going to reveal Flusterstorm off the top, and Ajdin will opt to pay 1 life to have him put that Flusterstorm into the graveyard. Then Guy's going to draw for turn and head into his first main phase, playing a basic mountain as his land for turn. He'll then tap out for Obosh.
Adrian, I'm gonna enter combat and attack you. Take 6. Take 6. Come down here with the rest of us, you swine.
Nice.
After that, we'll move over to Calvin's next turn. He draws and finds yet another land in Silent Clearing. With nothing else, he's going to pass the turn over to Ajdin, who draws a card, plays Rugged Prairie as his land for turn, drops his commander, and passes the turn to me. I'll start my turn by shocking in a Watery Grave that drops me down to 27, then I'll tap out and play Jace the Mind Sculptor. I'm immediately going to use Jace to brainstorm, so I'll draw 3 cards from the top, and then I'll put 2 cards back on top of my library. Then I'll head directly into combat. I'm going to turn my whole team sideways at Calvin for a grand total of 4 damage, which he has to take. Then we're going to stack our triggers, so we have Yuriko triggering once, twice, and then 3 times. Then we'll trigger the Ninja of the Deep Hours. We'll reveal Temporal Trespass, dealing 11 to everybody. For the next trigger, we're going to flip Okiba Gang Shinobi, dealing a grand total of 5, and then we'll flip Treasure Cruise, dealing a grand total of 8 to everyone. After that, we're going to draw for Ninja of the Deep Hours, and before we can move to our second main phase, Calvin decides there's no way he's going to be in this game, and he fetches in order to kill himself. Nobody has any responses to this impromptu seppuku, so Calvin is going to die, and I'll head into my second main phase, dropping Phyrexian Walker and Ornithopter. Then I'll move to discard and pass the turn over to Guy, who untaps, and triggers Sin Prodder.
Does someone want to pay 4 to stop me?
You can have a Twilight
No, it's
Prophet.
tempting, but you can have
You
him.
can keep it.
That'll kill you.
No.
After getting his extra card, he'll draw and play an Ancient Tomb as his land for turn. He's then going to tap for 4 mana, floating 1 colorless, and cast Vial Smasher the Fierce out of his command zone. Then he'll use that colorless in conjunction with Ancient Tomb and Steam Vents to make 4 mana and lose 2 life, in order to play Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, copying Obosh the Prey Piercer. He then heads into combat, swinging me with both the Obosh and the Sin Prodder. I need to block the Obosh with the Phyrexian Walker, and then I take the damage from the Sin Prodder, which winds up being 3 times 2, doubled again, for a grand total of 12 damage. We then pass the turn to Ajdin. After drawing, he's going to play Windswept Heath as his land for turn, immediately fetching and getting a Plains, dropping to 5 life. Then I'll tap out all of his mana in order to cast Hammer of Nazan, equipping it to Akiri, and passing the turn straight back to me. I'll start my turn by drawing, and then I'm going to tap for 1 black mana.
Ajdin, you and me, buddy. You want a Scheming Symmetry?
Yeah.
Cool, let's do it.
I know what I'm getting.
I'll put a copy of Commandeer on top of my library,
This will save me.
and then Ajdin shows he's given up all hope by putting Shuko on top of his. I'll then use my Jace's Minus ability to bounce Guy's Sakashima of 1,000 Faces and head into combat, attacking Guy with all of my creatures. Guy heads into blockers, and I'll use Vial Smasher to block the Ninja of Deep Hours. Yuriko triggers, and I'll reveal Commandeer from the top of my library, dealing 7 to each of my opponents, and this will cause me to win the game.
It was too fast for me.
Fuck you guys.
Lol.
That one was pretty fast. Let's talk about how the game went in order of the least impactful player all the way up to the most impactful, which also typically tends to be the winner. In this case, that probably was the case. I want to cut both Calvin and Ajdin out of the equation right now when we're talking about the impact of the game. Neither of them did anything to really impact the game at all. Calvin kept it was kind of a risky keep, considering he knows about my deck list and that I do run Thoughtseize Mental Misstep. He knows that the Sakashima Vial Smasher deck plays cards like Flusterstorm and would probably counter a card like Land Tax. That said, if no one had it, he would have had a pretty solid opener, so I can see why he kept it. He ended up getting shut down really quickly. I Thoughtseized him, and I countered his land tax. He was able to develop a mana base, but that's all he was able to do without that Vampiric Tutor. He couldn't get a board wipe, and it probably wouldn't have resolved even if he got it. I literally didn't do anything but play Akiri and Hammer of Nazan that game, and that just wasn't very good. I'm not sure why he didn't play one of his 2-drops that were in his opener, but he just didn't. So first we'll talk about Guy and the Vial Smasher Sakashima of 1,000 Faces pairing. I really like building this deck. It's really cool. And what he did, this game was a lot different than what I initially planned for the deck to do, because it included Obosh, and Sin Prodder was a part of that equation too. He opened on a fetch land on turn 1, which is fine. He fetched, got a good piece of mana, I believe it was a Steam Vents, and then he followed it up with the Dragon Skull Summit into the Soul Ring, which allowed him to play a turn 2 Sin Prodder. Really good. It has menace, it has 3 power. It's odd, you know, it's a 3-drop. So when he followed it up with Obosh, that was 6 damage. And then there was a point where he cloned his Obosh with Sakashima, which isn't the normal line. Typically you want to be cloning Vial Smasher, but he recognized very quickly that this game was not going to go long enough for Vial Smasher triggers to do anything, so he cloned the Obosh. Meaning that when he attacked me with the Sin Prodder and it had menace and I only had 2 untapped creatures, that was like 12 damage right there. So if the turn had ever gotten back around to Guy, there was a very good chance he could have started putting me and Ajdin out of the game that turn, on his 5th turn. He didn't get a 5th turn because the Yuriko deck did the thing, and the Yuriko deck did the thing like super fast. No one had interaction for me, and that's one of the reasons to play a deck like this, because you got to make your opponents have it, and if they don't have it, they're kind of dead in the water. Calvin would have been the deck that interacted the most. He's playing kind of a tap-up control deck, like I said earlier, but he was cut off from his Vampiric Tutor, and he was just counting on drawing lands. He couldn't even really fetch, even though I think he should have fetched, because I imagine his reason for not fetching was to make sure that he drew lands in the sequence he needed to so he could fetch properly. But he's a 2-color deck, so I'm not really sure what the thinking was there. But he wasn't able to hold it together, and he was the interaction player. Ajdin had the Swords to Plowshares, but he found out pretty early on that Swords to Plowsharing's Yuriko isn't super good because it's always a 2-drop, and I had a ton of creatures to ninjutsu out. For the Yuriko, we dealt 40 damage to all of our opponents over the course of 5 turns, and we played Jace the Mind Sculptor, and usually when we drop that card, we win the game pretty quickly. And that's how that game went. That's all I have for you guys today. Hopefully you enjoyed it, like nice short one. We've got some more content coming out this week. Maybe we'll do a little update. I don't know what we're doing on Twitter. I wanted to start talking about what the schedule for content coming out is going to look like, because we're talking about streaming pretty soon and stuff too. So keep your ears to the ground for that, because we'll be trying to give that information to you guys as we solidify it in our schedule. That said, thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I will see you next time.